When New Zealand came to India for a three-match test series, few would have expected such a historic event to happen, now, especially as they had lost in Sri Lanka. So India have been whitewashed in India for the first time in test matches where the series has had more than two matches. So India down 3-0, and now they have the unenviable task of beating Australia and Australia for the third time to have any chance of qualifying for that WTC final for the third time. But this was essentially supposed to be a series to beef up India's tally on the WTC table, but now India slipped to second position behind Australia, and you don't know what's going to happen next. So I asked, quite a bit of a shocker this series, yes, but and excellent performance by New Zealand. But there have been reports now quoting anonymous BCCI sources saying that if India don't make it to that WTC final, seniors like Rohit and Kohli might be phased out. And there was another report, again citing anonymous sources, saying that the four seniors, including Jadeja, Ashwin, Kohli, and Rohit, had agreed, in fact, to play the Leap Trophy, but they backed out later. Now, there'll be many more such reports coming out because what is conversation about cricket in India without the drama? But what are you hearing, and what are your thoughts personally about Rohit and Kohli and their future with this red ball team?
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole load of questions that have cropped up, hasn't it? Isn't it? Because about 3 or 4 weeks back, almost every cricket lover in this country and expert and pundit thought that India would win the series hands down. In fact, the result expected was the other way around, that India would win 3-0, and if not 3-0, at least they would certainly win the series. But it's all gone topsy-turvy. And in a very disastrous way. It's been a debacle, Anirudh, because A, you've lost the series, then you've been whitewashed, which has never happened, as you mentioned, in a three-test series or more, three or more test series. And it's just put so many question marks against some key players who are about to take off for Australia. In a week's time, they'll be playing in Australia. In another 10, 15 days, there'll be the first test match. And it just seems suddenly this team, which looks so strong after the series against Bangladesh, is now looking very timid, very ill prepared, very undercooked, and I dare say that ill equipped to take on Australia. Now, obviously, we know in sports things can turn around very quickly, but there are loads of questions. Now, there are questions about the players, there are questions about what the players didn't do, despite the BCCI trying to tell them to do things like playing in the Duleep Trophy or playing enough, domestic cricket, red ball cricket to be prepared for a test series. I think I don't know the absolute veracity of all these stories that are emerging. I would hope that the BCCI comes out and tells it like it is and let the message go out very strongly to the players themselves also, that you can't be always behind this camouflage of superstardom, and when it comes to upholding the prestige of Indian cricket, then that is paramount. So that's one part. The other is how the team performed. If you want me to give a very quick summary of what I think went wrong, I think there was a lingering of the T20 euphoria, T20 World Cup victory euphoria. I think that there was perhaps not enough preparation for red ball cricket, as we know. We got misled by the way in which we hammered Bangladesh. I think New Zealand came here well prepared, and also as underdog, not as much pressure as there was on India. And then there was series of mistakes made, starting from batting first at Bangalore and getting bowled out for 46. And then from there onwards, from Bangalore onwards, India were pretty much on the back foot and just started getting worse and worse. And then the old ploy, the old trap that you set for overseas teams, that snare, that let them come here, we'll show them on spinning tracks, just completely boomeranged. And it showed up two things. One is that overseas teams and overseas players are getting better and better equipped to play Indian spin on Indian pitches. We've seen that in the last 3-4 years when England have come and won the first match of the season. They've gone on to lose, but they did beat India under Joe Root and then again against Ben Stokes. Australia have come here. They beat under Steve Smith. They beat us at Pune on a ranked turner. Pat Cummins' team won one match into 2022-23. So overseas teams have been coming here and doing rather well, and they are coming armed with their own spinners now, who may not be as don't have the star value of an Ashwin or a Jadeja, or in fact the experience, but they are ambitious. They are deeply motivated, and I think what is also happening is that our own batsmen, our spinners have done well. I don't think there's anything to fault our spinners in this series or even 4-5 years earlier or 10 years earlier. But our batsmen are looking less and less adept at playing spin bowling. Now that might seem like a conundrum, but it's happening. and it's evident in the scores that we see. I mean, I can now, in hindsight, when you look back, Anirudh, Ben Stokes' England team got hammered ultimately, but they won the first match. And had they not insisted on going their baseball, way, hammer and tongs in every match, they would have run India far closer. So I think that wrong tactics by Ben Stokes, some questionable tactics by India in this series, certainly about the decision to bat first at Bangalore, the kind of pitches that were prepared, the belief that we could steamroll past this New Zealand. I think it just made the team a little complacent. And by the time they realized that things are going a little haywire, it was just too late.
Yeah, so let's not, in all this hustle, forget to give New Zealand their flowers. What an effort by the Kiwis. And in the past 5 years or so, this has been sort of a nightmare team for India. You could say that, I saw this on Twitter. You could say that this has been what India has been to Australia in the past 5 years in Test cricket. New Zealand has been to India. So I looked up the numbers in the past 5 years. India and New Zealand have played 8 Test matches, and they've lost. India have lost 6 out of those, and they've drawn one, and India's won only one, which was last series at home, which was a 1-0 series victory. And of course, they lost that first WTC final. So, what do you think the Kiwis have done differently to other touring teams in the past 5 years?
I think they just, they didn't overthink the thought of the prospects of playing India in India. They've come here earlier. A lot of them play the IPL. I've been mentioning this often enough, or writing about it, that a lot of them play. I mean, Kane Williamson, Trent Bolt, who didn't play the series, but Tim Southey, Rachin Ravindra, all these guys are now familiar with Indian conditions, Indian players, Indian thought process, Indian pitch preparations. So they came, prepared for it. I think that I read a comment somewhere on social media, whether it was some TV scribe or a player, I'm not sure now. But the fact that they played well and yet lost in Sri Lanka actually bolstered their, self belief. They said, if we can, I mean, we lost here, but it could have gone the other way. So when they came here, I think that's one simple formula which they had was to put India under pressure, especially the key players, Rohit Sharma, Virat Kohli, and then there's of course the whole bunch of youngsters who are there, and not give wickets too easily to the Indian spinners. I think that must have been a one paragraph uh, credo, if you will put it that way, that Tom Latham must have given his players, that guys, we need to hold our nerves. We'll put pressure on them. Let's see what happens, because the pressure of expectation, the burden of expectation, was certainly humongously more on India than on the Kiwis. And as it turned out, I think that thought process was absolutely right. And India's problems were compounded because their two biggest players, Rohit Sharma and Virat Kohli, were horrendously out of form. So it just kind of put India under pressure every time they went out to bat. Look at the series of scores in this, the number of collapses that we've had. 46 all out in the second innings in Bangalore, 7 wickets lost for 54 runs. In Pune, 2 collapses. In Mumbai, 2 collapses. So you're losing wickets in a cluster because your top order was just not holding up. So, I mean, it's not you can't raise questions about the caliber of a Rohit Sharma or a Virat Kohli, but certainly one can say that they were in really poor nick. And that brought down the team's performances, overall.
Yeah. So, lastly, now India head to Australia, as you said earlier, and I think they have to win 4-0 or something like that, preposterous. Still, it's such a blockbuster series, and planning would have been in the works for months. Uh, do you expect a knee-jerk reaction from management, or do you think they take this as a one-of-a-kind event, this loss, and just move ahead with what they know?
I think they have to learn lessons and learn lessons very quickly. I don't think there's a need for an overhaul. The team had been announced before the series was over against New Zealand. And pretty much, it's the same lot were there. So they don't need to actually panic. If they show panic, the Australians will just kind of just swallow us up. Because they're waiting for revenge. And they've lost 2 series on the trot to India when India have gone there down under. So I think, in fact, that Rohit and Virat still have a very, very important role to play in Australia. Now, we've talked about the WTC, and they have to win the matches in Australia to get into the WTC final. But it's not just that if we reach the WTC final, these guys will preserve their places. Rohit, Virat, and some of the others need to get amongst the runs. So even if India win the series and Rohit and Virat are not getting runs, there's a cloud over them. So I think that This is a very important series for India for various reasons. Blockbuster series from a box office point of view, making it a hat trick of wins, getting into the WTC final, but also for some of these players like Virat, like Rohit, like Ashwin, and even perhaps to an extent Jadeja for playing overseas, to kind of reiterate their formidable talent. We all know. I mean, let's not forget that they've been wonderful over the last 10, 12, almost 15 years. So you can't just summarily dismiss what they've done. But you can't also ignore that right now, currently, they've hit a trough. And it is their business now to come out of that trough. Nobody can handhold them and lead them out of the trough. It has to come from within. So I'm hoping that they rediscover that their mojo, and we have a really good series down under, because we've got some really exciting talent. What we saw even in this series, Yashasvi Jaiswal, Shubman Gill, you know, Rishabh Pant, and Washington Sundar, they're all emerging as high quality players. If they performed rather well in a very tense and high strung, high pressure series, then I think that they've shown qualities of going further, of getting, better and bigger in the game. So I'm hoping that the seniors and the juniors combine well in Australia, and we have a spankingly good performance there.
Yeah, so there you have it. In case you wanted any more intrigue around that Border-Gavaskar Trophy, you have it now. And I'm sure marketing managers on both sides are really happy and looking forward to the series. So we'll get back to you before the first match of the series. And that's it for this episode of Sports Room. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Andrew. Bye bye. Take care.